Hi guys. Okay, so here's what we're doing for your one pagers. There are three required things. The first thing is a border. So along the outside of your page, along the edges of your page, that's where you're going to put the information that's listed right there on that first bullet point. So you need your title of your book and your author. I want you to include your genre. So is it fiction, nonfiction, historical fiction? Is it romance? Is it horror? What is the genre? The year and the place of publication, and any awards or accolades that this book has received, or let's say they haven't received any awards or accolades, an excerpt from a review that you agree with. So typically on the back of the books, sometimes on the front of the books or in the front cover, there are reviews. And if your book doesn't have that, a quick Google search will likely give you something, right? So all of that stuff should be in the border along the outside of your page. It should be really clear which book you're talking about. So make sure that title and that author is prominent. Yeah. The next thing that's required is your rating. From 1 to 10, what would you rate that book and why? So 10 being like amazing, you might read this book again, you'd recommend it to everybody. 1 being like you wish you'd never picked it up. Yeah. And then the next thing that is required is 2 to 3 important quotes from that book. Quotes that are stand out, like moments, super important, super kind of representative of the book as a whole. And make sure that you are, with your quotes, citing your page numbers. You don't need to do the author because this is a one pager. The author's already listed on the page, but you do need to do the quotes. And then you have options. You're gonna have to do a couple more things other than those three required things. So I've listed out some options for you to consider. Favorite or least favorite, or maybe most important characters. And characters doesn't necessarily have to mean fictional characters, right? If you're reading a nonfiction, you could still do this, for example. Even though they're real people that are in your book, you could still talk about them if you'd like to. The overarching theme, moral of the story, lesson, if you want to do that. Important symbols, maybe things that reoccur over and over again. The author's writing style. You could talk about how the author writes, the kind of language that they use. Relationship to current or historical events. So if there's something in your book that is really resonating with you because of what's happening in the world today, then you could talk about that. If you have a particular connection to the book yourself, you could talk about that. If it, relates to your life, your culture, your future plans. Something that you learned that will stay with you. So maybe like one lesson or one fact that you found to be really important that you think you're going to remember 5-10 years from now. You can talk about the setting. Where does it take place and why is that important? And setting, remember, is not just the place, right? But also the time, the culture, the overall surroundings. You could talk about the author, right? Where did the author get the inspiration for this book? Or maybe, especially if it's a nonfiction, how do they establish their credibility? Or maybe if they've written other books that are similar to this, maybe there's a series, something like that. You could cast the characters. Like if you were to make this book into a movie or a TV show, who would play the leading roles and why? Please do not use a pre-made cast. Lots of books have already been made into movies. You're not allowed to just go look at what some other movie director, casting director has done and just use that. That's not, no. You could talk about vocabulary. If there were a lot of vocab words in your book that, made the book kind of challenging, or that you really appreciated that vocabulary, then you can pick out a few of those words and include their definitions on your one pager. You could talk about a particular part that made you laugh or cry or think, that a part that really stuck out to you. Maybe you had to put the book down for a second after that part because it was just so powerful, right? If you had that kind of moment, that's a really good thing to talk about. You could write a haiku about it. And that right there, the word haiku is a link to a website that will teach you how to write a haiku. But essentially, it's a short poem with 5 syllables in the first line, 7 syllables in the second line, and 5 syllables in the last line. So it's a 3-line poem. You could write a haiku about your book. You could draw an important scene, something that happened that was really maybe like the climax or an important turning point in the book. And if you have any other ideas, I'm open to hearing ideas. You can email me, let me know if you have something else that you think could work for this. Okay. So the common complaint with one-pagers is, but I'm not an artist, I can't draw. Well, and I'm not an art teacher, right? I'm not qualified to be an art teacher, but we know that research shows that creativity boosts academic performance, and we know that combining visual and verbal learning, when we combine pictures and words together, it also boosts academic performance. It boosts your retention, boosts your understanding, all of that. So with this one pager, I do want you to add color, texture, images, and I want you to use them thoughtfully and purposely throughout your one pager. You can do this one pager digitally or with physical paper. Now, clearly, I can't give you like markers and crayons and things like that like I would ordinarily do in a classroom. But if you have those things at home and you want to use those things, absolutely go for it. If you don't, or if you prefer, you can also just do this digitally. Please do not plagiarize. Okay, yeah, you're going to get quotes from your book. You're going to cite those quotes. That's not plagiarism. But for instance, if you put, a review, instead of your own rating of this book, you put somebody else's rating you copy pasted from the internet, or if you copy paste a whole one pager from the internet, that's plagiarism, and that's going to get you a 0. And trust me when I say you don't want that in your grade book at the end of the semester. Okay. So here's an example of some one pagers that use kind of a template, and I'll give you some templates as well to use. So you can see that each part of the one pager is filled in, even with these are kinds of more simplistic ones, but even still you can see a use of color. You can see a really good use of space. Like almost all the space is taken up, right? There's not a whole lot of blank white space on those pages. And they do use images, symbols, pictures to, again, further express something about that book. Now, some people are artists, and if you are, run with this. I love that. Give yourself the opportunity to express yourself fully through your artistic talents. If you can do something like this, I would love to see it, but that is not a requirement for this particular assignment, okay? I don't expect you to be able to do stuff like this because I can't do stuff like this, right? So that's not fair. But if you can, if you like this, if this is your jam, like, go for it. So here's my example. This is a book that I was reading over the course of the quarter, semester, whatever you want to call it. So you can see I have the title and the author and all that stuff in the border. And then I have all of my kind of information in the center. And the way that I decided on colors and pictures for the overall theme of this was the cover of the book. That kind of greenish color and the orangish color, that was the color of the cover of the book. And the cover of the book also had pictures of shoes on it. And so I used pictures of shoes in each of the corners there to kind of bring that idea into my one pager as well. The reality pedagogy and urban education is kind of part of the subtitle of the book, so I included that as well. And then I split up the page into 5 different sections. I have information about the author, who he was, what his experience, his credibility is, his inspiration, and pictures of the author. And then a picture of Columbia University's crest because that's where he is a professor right now. I have my rating with my stars right here and an explanation of why I gave it a 9 out of 10. I have my 3 quotes here that stood out to me. Notice that I have my page numbers cited at the back end of the quote in that parenthetical citation. And I included images that have to do with school because this is all about teaching in school. For the connection to me, I put a quote in, and the page number is actually in the preface, so that's why it says IX. It's because it's the page number in the preface. And then I explained what that quote had to do with me, and what the connection this book had to me. For the images, I chose pictures of movies. Two movies that have kind of white teachers that go into the quote unquote hood and like save the kids or whatever. And the whole idea is that the savior complex, right, is something that the author Emden describes in this book as being harmful. And so I want to avoid, I don't want to be like, those teachers who go in and think that, they're going to save people from themselves. That's not like a healthy way of looking at things. Then I have a part that made me think, and I have a quote from that part. You don't necessarily have to have a quote from that part. You could draw the part that made you think. You could just describe it in summary, but I chose to put a quote in there. And then I explained what I was thinking when I read that part. And I included images of two kind of other things that I've seen that have similar ideas. One is the kind of anger translator from Key and Peele. And then the other one is from a TV show called Big Mouth, and they have the code switching song. And basically, both of these is kind of about not being able to express yourself fully and authentically because of the color of your skin. And so that related to me to that part of the book that really kind of made me stop and like ponder about things and wonder if I've ever made anybody feel that way. So that was a really powerful moment for me. But you can see overall, it's very clear that this took a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of thought. I've been thoughtful about connecting the text to myself and to other things in the media and other things that I've experienced and seen before. And it's clear that I have a really good understanding of the book as well. Here's a bad example. It's the same book, right? But you can tell there's no effort in here, right? There's no use of color images. Even if I added like a couple clip art things to this, like it just wouldn't have the same kind of effect, right? Even looking at the text, you can see that the text, the size, the font, I've put no effort into that, or the spacing even, you can see like it goes over the line here. I haven't explained things fully, right? I'm a teacher. That's not like, okay, so what, right? Give me a little bit more than that. I'm missing a box, so we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And look at just overall, you can tell there's so much empty space. There really wasn't a whole lot of effort and thought put into this, right? Big difference between that and that. So grading, how do we grade this thing? So you got to meet your 3 mandatory requirements. That is what's in the border with all the title and the publishing, all that stuff. You need a rating of it. And then you need 2 to 3 important quotes. Those are the 3 mandatory requirements. Then you need to also include 2 other ones. So I gave you that list of options, all kinds of different things that you could do. Pick 2 of those things to add to your 1-pager. You could pick 3 if you wanted. There's extra space on your 1-pager. You want to add a 3rd one, absolutely go for it. But you got to pick at least 2 others in addition to those 3 mandatory ones. So basically at least 5 areas, 5 kind of boxes, if you will, on your 1-pager. You want to make sure the whole page is utilized. There should be very little empty or blank space on your 1-pager. And then you want to make sure that color and images are used thoughtfully throughout that page. So it shouldn't just be like, oh, I copy pasted, this picture into 2 boxes, but the rest of the page doesn't have anything. It should be used throughout. And then be prepared to explain your choices, just like I did when I was going over my example. We're going to be making flip grids, so you should be prepared to explain, why did you choose this color? Why did you choose this image? Why did you put this here? It's going to be 50 points total, and you have until Wednesday at 11:59, but this is your only class period to work, so do use the time wisely. You're going to need it. It takes a little while to do this. And further along in this slideshow, there are the templates. So you can see a couple different options that you have, but you can also use your own blank page and make your own template, your own design. That's completely up to you. These are just some options for you to get started with. All right, guys, good luck and have fun.